Chai Mitzvah tutorial on humility, anava. Mussar and the study of Mussar is all about space and place. That's the overarching concept of studying Mussar. It's about knowing what our place is and not taking up too much space in the world, in conversation, in our relationships with others, or even when we spread our belongings all over the house. Taking up 2 seats on the bus when we only need 1, behaving negatively in relationship with others. All of these things are part of the key Mussar concept of humility. Balanced humility is about taking up the right amount of space and knowing exactly what our place is. We don't want to take up too much space, nor do we want to take up too little. As we look at the world around us today, with so many environmental concerns that we're dealing with, we need to know how we take up too much space or need to take up more space. How are we dealing with land, water, air, fossil fuels, and how do we minimize our carbon footprint? These are good exercises to consider as part of Mussar practice, but also as part of living responsibly in the world. As we begin to explore the midah, the trait of humility in this session, we will be looking not only at our relationships with others, but also our relationship with the environment and the planet. Let's take a look at text 1. Text 1 is an interesting text. Many people do not know that Genesis has 2 versions of creation, one found in Genesis 1 and one found in Genesis 2. And in our study of this midah, of humility, anava, we're going to look at both aspects of the Genesis story. Genesis 1 tells us that man is made in our image after our likeness, and let man have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. And God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth." People should focus on the phrase, subdue it. Replenish the earth, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over it. That's worthy of a lot of thought and discussion. And so the first conversation point asks us, what does it mean that you were created in God's image? That's a stopping point right there and a wonderful, wonderful large group discussion. It's a general discussion, it's not too personal, and everyone can express an opinion that feels comfortable. Is it a humbling thought? Is it one that creates a sense of pride or even arrogance in people? That we are created in God's image. The text in Genesis 1 also says that we have been put on earth to subdue and control it. And the question asks, do you think that should be our relationship with the earth and its creatures? And should it be all of the time, some of the time, or none of the time? What is our purpose here? Should we be put on the earth to subdue and control it? Another wonderful large group discussion, which then segues into a small group or chavruta discussion. In what ways is your relationship with the earth one of dominion? And in which ways do you work to change the relationship? This is a beautiful discussion, particularly in these times of global warming and all of the trauma to the planet that we're experiencing. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires. All of these things are part of this discussion. And people will bring them up, and I think then after the small group exchange, it might be nice to regroup as a large group and process what people have come up with. As we move forward in our discussion, we look at and explore Genesis 2. second version of Genesis, in Genesis 2, paints a completely different picture of humanity's dominion over the earth. It offers a more expansive approach and one that is more humble. It says, "And the eternal God took man and put him into the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it." And that's something that we want to consider in juxtaposition to the version in Genesis 1. The question asks, in what ways do you practice humility in your relationship to the earth? And if this is a value to you, consider whether it has been instilled as a Jewish value, a good citizen value, or both. A lovely discussion for the large group to explore. And people may even express surprise that they didn't know there were two separate versions of the creation story in Genesis. So this is a very enriching text because it presents an expanded view of creation and why we're here and how can we care for the earth in these particular times of environmental challenge and difficulty. Is it a Jewish value? Is it a good citizen value? Perhaps it's both. We go on next to text number 2. A very interesting text to explore, which comes from a Mussar text, anonymous Mussar text, or Chot Tzadikim, called The Ways of the Righteous, but we don't know to whom it is attributed. The root of humility is that one should consider, while at peace and quiet, healthy and rich, that the Creator has done much good to her, and that she is undeserving of all that God has given her. But a person who feels humility before the Creator only when she becomes ill in body or in any limb, or when her children or friends die, or when she loses her wealth or high position, or when she grows old, this may belong to the realm of humility and is accepted by God, but does not reach the essence of it. I would suggest a reread of this text and a deep read of this text in the large group, just to be able to understand the language of it, and then a move to the conversation. The text draws the distinction between humility and being humbled, and that is a wonderful opportunity for exploration in the large group, with examples that people may wish to cite. What does humility mean? And how is that compared to feeling humbled? Can people cite examples of both in their lives? As we go forward with this, the Mussar text, some texts have a dichotomy. The author of this particular one asserts that humility born from suffering is not on the same spiritual level as that derived from a grateful relationship with God. Consider how your personal experiences of suffering and of gratitude relate to your own cultivation of humility. A very deep, deep discussion can stem from this particular question. We explore our sense of humility born from suffering. And is that the same as when we have a grateful relationship with God and experience humility under that heading? And what have we experienced in our lives in terms of suffering and gratitude? This would lend itself well to a smaller group discussion where people can share more intimately the experiences in their lives regarding suffering and gratitude and the practice of humility. And finally, for large group discussion, in your opinion, what is the relationship of humility to action in the world? I draw your attention to text 4, a wonderful, wonderful text and one of my favorite texts. Dear God, guide me along the path of sincere humility. If ever I put on airs, stop me. Bless me with a humble spirit, with eyes that see only the good in people, with a mind always open to others' opinions, with a heart always caring of their concerns. Teach me to be humble myself, even before the lowliest of your children, whose very brokenness brings them closer to you. A classic text from Reb Nachman of Bratslav, a Hasidic Rebbe and scholar. A lovely prayer that I often suggest to people because people always really resonate with this prayer. And I say, you know, this is really nice to take a picture of this with your cell phone camera and carry it with you, or copy it and put it on the mirror in your bathroom or on your nightstand or your refrigerator, because it's something to really keep close. It's really a guide for having a humility practice and living in right relationship with others in the world. We then are asked to explore why someone might put on airs. And that's a good question for the large group. Why might somebody not be humble, but be arrogant and boastful? And then looking at the end of the prayer, what does the last sentence say about our relationship to vulnerability? And how is it related to humility? Teach me to humble myself even before the lowliest of your children, whose very brokenness brings them closer to you. In an age of many broken people that we come across in our personal lives and in the news that we listen to, or the news feed on our cell phone or the newspapers, this is a very wonderful thought to explore, because it teaches us, in its questioning of us, how we relate to others and to the world at large. Finally, we're told that Reb Nachman, the founder of the Bratslav school of Hasidic Judaism, rejected the idea of hereditary Hasidic dynasties, believing that each disciple should find his own Rebbe, or tzaddik, teacher, righteous teacher, and that each Jew has the potential to be a tzaddik. How does this stance reflect humility? Reb Nachman's approach was very unique and really influenced the path of Judaism, because it took an institution that Judaism had in place for many years, the idea of hereditary passing of leadership, and said that anyone could be your Rebbe, anyone could be your righteous teacher, and that you had just to find that person and to engage in relationship with them, to learn from them, that each of us has the potential to be a tzaddik, that we each have the potential to teach others and to be righteous teachers. This very much reflects a stance of humility, and I think is a revolutionary shift in the path of Judaism and bears discussion among the large group. I think that people will express feelings about that, because it shifted the path of Judaism from looking upward to someone greater than you to looking across to someone who is your equal, that you could learn from and take experience in life from. As we go on, we are given a brief text quote, text number 5, which says, "Before honor comes humility." And this is a text from Proverbs. Before honor comes humility. We explore what the word humility means to us. Oftentimes, you will have someone in the group discussion who will pull up the definition on their phone and look up and say, humility means, and they'll share the meaning that they found. But this is more of a personal discussion of what does humility mean to you? And then we are asked, is part of being humble acknowledging the gifts and strengths that we have each been blessed with and using them for the greater good? And perhaps exploring what some of those gifts are in small group discussion. And then coming back to the large group to explore how humility and self-awareness of both one's strengths and vulnerabilities are connected. Our final text, text number 6, says to us, always seek to learn wisdom from everyone, to recognize your failings and correct them. In doing so, you will learn to stop thinking about your virtues, and you will take your mind off your friends' faults. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Leffin of Satanav, also a Mussar teacher. A very probing question. We are asked, how are we able to assess our own strengths and vulnerabilities? By what process do we engage in order to figure out where we have our strengths and where we are vulnerable? and further to look at seeking feedback and accepting constructive criticism from others. How well do we do that? This last text can be equally valuable to discuss in small groups or chavruta, or with the large group, or in small groups, and then returning to the large group to revisit the answers. Finally, we move on to the practices section. We have a rich section of practices for humility, for anava, and I'd like to focus on the first three. I find them particularly meaningful in terms of things I have tried and found rewarding to do. Our first practice says, Rabbi Simcha Bonham of Pesachicha taught that everyone must have 2 pockets with a note in each, so that he or she can reach into the one or the other, depending on the need. When feeling lowly and depressed, discouraged, or disconsolate, one should reach into the right pocket and there find the words, "For my sake was the world created," from the Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin. But when feeling high and mighty, one should reach into the left pocket and there find the words, "I am but dust and ashes," from the book of Genesis. Make your own pocket blessings from 2 slips of paper, roll them up, tie them with string, and put one in each pocket to carry. See how they stand you in good stead through the day. It is a wonderful practice that I have done and have found so very rewarding. The second practice says choose one time each day to notice how much space you're taking. Are you taking too little, too much, or just the right amount? And check this out in different places to see if it's your physical space, the space you're sharing in conversation, the space you share and take up at the dinner table in conversation, or with a group of your peers in, let's say, a book group discussion, or a Mussar class discussion, and try to find a balance, and try to recalibrate yourself, and see if you are typically the first one to speak up, or conversely to remain silent, if you might want to try a different tact and see how it goes when you alter your manner of interacting, your manner of taking up space with others. And finally, notice how much physical, not just emotional space you take up in a line, on a bench, on a public transportation like a bus, or in shared space at home, and how you might want to reflect on that and alter it. There are other very valuable practices in terms of humility that are listed in this section, and I urge you to explore each one with your group and see which practice people might wish to share in between this session and your next one, and perhaps come back and report on to the larger group or to a chavruta partner. Good luck with your study of the practice of humility, anava.